All right, guys. So today we are going to be, like I said, rounding up CSS class with the advanced CSS. What I just need from you guys today is I want you guys to give me more attention today because there's going to be a lot of talks. I'm going to explain quite a lot of concepts, and I want you guys to just flow along with me. We'll have some examples to check. So advanced CSS, and we are going to start our advanced CSS with what is called CSS Display. So CSS Display, it's what we usually have to do or have to use when you're trying to arrange your code on the page. So a typical example, if you look at this image that you're seeing here, you can see a typical page and see how different sections of your website is being arranged. We have a bigger section here, we have some smaller sections, then we have the middle part, we have the other right part, and some other tabs and all that. How do we place these things on a page in order that everything looks exactly the way we want, the arrangement per se? One of the ways we do that is using the CSS display properties. So we are going to be setting displays on some of our elements to determine where we want them to be on the page. So let's say, for example, you have 10 sections, but you don't want them to just be arranged one after another. You want to mix them somehow. You want to have them in grid format, in some other format. Well, depending on how you want to arrange them, one of the ways to do that is to set the display properties on those elements. Now, there are three major different types of display properties that we'll be learning in this class. One of them is block display property. So one of them is block display property, the inline display property, and the inline block display property. Now, naturally, without setting any CSS display property on an element, each element you write on the page will take the form of the block display property by default. So whether you set or you don't set display property, every element you write or you have been writing all along till today would always take the block display property. Now, how does this even look on a page? And those are the things we're going to be looking at. So let's say, for example, you have these three different elements on your web page. Let's say the first one, you have hello, you have world, and you have hello, beautiful world. Naturally, and by default, each of these elements will take the entire width of the page. So even though hello is just a 5-character word, and it's not getting up to the end of the width of the page, on the background, it is actually occupying the entire width of that page. And that's what is called block. So in this case, you haven't set anything at all, but by default, it takes the block position on that web page. And what block means is that it is going to occupy in the background the entire width of that page. The same thing happens to world. When you write another, maybe this one is an H3, and then you have another H3 word, that is also going to take the entire width of that page. So that also occupies the block display contents. Now, what happens when you now need to put those two words side by side, knowing that they already occupy block positions themselves, and whenever they occupy block positions, they're going to push the next element, they're going to keep pushing them down. So when even if you add another element afterward, it's going to push it down because each of them must occupy that block position. It must take the full width of the page. Now, if you now want to make an element sit side by side, those are one of the things you can do with CSS display property. Now, I want to use this one to explain a simple concept, which is not fully part of what we're learning today, but just to mention it because I know you guys are going to come across it at some point. So there are situations where you want to write 3 or more words on the same row, right? On the same line. But even though they belong to the same line, You want to have them show different properties. So for example, you have hello, beautiful world. Hello and world are taking the black color, but the beautiful is taking a different color. How do you make this happen within a single sentence, a single statement? We do this using something that we call span. Now, how do we do this? So if you're writing the code for this, let's say the entire statement is a paragraph text, it's going to look like something like this. So you have a paragraph text open, and then you have hello. Then you're going to open a span. We're going to open a span, and inside that span, there will be beautiful. Before you now write the world. Mind my spelling. And then close the paragraph. So now you have elements embedded inside an element. And then in your CSS styling, you can now style span and make it color whatever you want to give it, purple. Like I said, this is not it's not really part of what we're learning today, but I'm mentioning this because at some point it will show up. So you don't start asking, okay, how does this happen, or something like that. So to do things like this, we use what is called the span HTML element, or the HTML tag. We use that to achieve something like this. So if you have a single statement and you want different parts of that statement to exhibit different characters or different properties, you can do that using what is called span. So if you have more than a single word that you want to have different colors, you can keep putting them in a different span and styling them separately on that. So that's what I'm going to say on that for now. When it comes up later, I will explain better on this. So for now, we're talking about the block display property, which is often the default display property that is set by every element until you change it. Now, let's say you have something like this. You have two H2 elements.
Quick question.
Yes.
Just sorry to deviate. So in situations where you have like a whole paragraph, maybe hundreds of words, and you have like multiple spans, and you want to style them all differently, like would you now have to add like IDs to the span? Like,
yes.
Okay.
So you can go into your span and create an ID, a class, or an attribute to be able to style them separately. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let's say you have these two words, Harry and Potter, not on the same line, but on different lines in your code. You would expect that this is the way it's going to show up when you preview them. Does anybody agree with me? So you have the first H2 Harry, the second H2 Potter. This is what you're going to see. Does anybody disagree with that? Or we all agree? If we all agree, now, what if you want this Harry and Potter to be side by side and you don't want to replace the code? You don't want to move this code to the side. Even if you move this to the side, it is still going to be one after another. It's going to be represented in blocks, except you move the Potter and put it inside a single H2. But in some cases, when you're writing your code, this is what you want to do, but you still want them to show side by side. What do? That's where the display property comes in. So to do that, you just need to put a display property in your H2. So you target your H2 in your CSS code, target H2, set the display property, and set it to what? Inline. The moment you set this to inline, it will disregard the fact that they are both in different H2 elements. It will put them side by side. Like this.
Go to that slide where you had it top bottom.
So here, there was no styling. We just wrote our CSS code, our HTML code, Harry Potter, on two different lines with two different HTML tags. This is what you see. It's gonna come one after the other. The moment you add a display property and you set that display property to inline, it pushes the Potter to the side of Harry. If you have more than one H2, all of them will appear on the same line.
Thank you.
Right. So that's how inline actually behaves in the real sense. Now, the whole thing is that you can set your display property to whatever you want according to what you want to achieve on your web page. And the three major properties you can set there would be either the block, inline, as I mentioned before, or inline block, inline dash block. So we can have display to set to block, inline, or inline block. Now, how does this three look like? We've looked at how a block behaves. It occupies the entire width of the screen. We've looked at how the inline behaves. It keeps pushing them side by side until it gets to the end of the line before it drops them to the bottom. So yeah, you need to note that when you set to inline, at some point, if you have more elements on the page, they get to the end of the line. At that time, they drop to the next line. That is the only reason why they drop to the next line. But if there's still space on that line, you keep popping them into that line as much as you set it to inline. Now, so when you look at block, like I explained before, it's going to look like, sometimes you may not be able to see the elements on the page. Let's say you're using a div, and you know that div, except you set a background color, you're not going to be able to see div. It's imaginary, right? But remember that whenever you set your display to be block, or you did not set display at all, that element occupies the entire width of the page. And the more elements you add, they keep stacking on top of one another until it gets to the end of the page as well. So that's for block. For inline, let's say you have an element hello, it's never going to occupy the entire width. It will only occupy as long as the text is. So hello is a 5-character word. There will be a little bit of padding, but the width of that text of the element will only be as long as the text or the element itself. So it doesn't go beyond that. And if you add another element, it comes like that as well. The more you add element, they keep aligning on the same line until it gets to the end before it drops to the other line. That's for inline. Now, inline block. One thing that is common to this inline is this. For the block property that we looked here, we can set some properties on that block. We will not be able to set the width because it's already occupying the width by default, but we can set the height of each element on that page. So for example, this is an element 1, and this is an element 2. You can actually set the height of this element 1 in your CSS. Let's say you want it to go bigger than that, you can set it. But remember, you will not be able to set anything on the width because it's already by default occupying the entire width of the page. Now, for the inline, you cannot set whether the width or the height property, because it's going to always be fixed to the exact size of that element. It's never going to extend. Even if you set height to be 1,000, width to be 1 million, it's never going to move. But there are situations where you want that element to occupy its own width, but then you want to have that flexibility of being able to set the width for yourself and the height. And that's when you now use the inline block. So for the inline block, you can see the first element has a much bigger width and a much bigger height. There's another element after that, a much smaller width and a much smaller height. And you can have as many as possible like that. But for you to achieve something like this, it has to be set, the display property has to be set to inline block. So in other words, you are achieving the properties of a block, and at the same time, you're achieving the properties of an inline element. Remember, a block alone would not allow you to add another element side by side, but an inline would allow you to do that. A block would allow you to set the height, but not the width, because it's occupying the entire width. But an inline would not allow you to even set anything at all. But good luck, the good thing is that inline block will allow you to set both the width and the height of each of the elements. So these are the differences between these three types of display properties: the block type, the inline type, and the inline block type. Those three. Now, when I was
So,
talking,
sorry, inline block lets you set both width and height.
and the height, correct, on all the elements, as much as you set the display type to inline block. Now, although I said these are the three major types of display properties, there is one that is always silenced, but we use them time to time as well. And those are called the non-display property. And as the name implies, if you set the display property of an element to none, what happens is that element disappears. So there are times there's an element somewhere on a page, but probably because that element is just there temporarily. Maybe maybe you want the user to click a button, and when they click that button, you want that element to leave the page, to disappear from the page. It's a simple example of when you're going to use display none. So you're going to make sure that whenever the button is clicked, you grab the event and set the display property to be none. So when they click a button, that element disappears. That's when we use the display property none. It's silenced. It's not part of the major three, but it's also used to set display properties of on an element. So we have a box here before that is, as you can see, would be like an inline block element, but the moment you set it to display none, it disappears from the page. Now, how do we see this? I'm going to show you a simple website that I made to be able to visualize this thing and really understand how this works. So right now we have 3 elements on this page. This one is set to block display, the red box. The green box is set to inline, and the blue box is set to inline block. Now, to be able to know the differences between these 3 and be able to kind of sip it in, you would see that the block type already has a size. The inline is on the same line with the inline block, because both of them can allow that. Only the block cannot allow any other element to be by its side. Now, these 2 red lines represents the element with the block setting. The 2 green lines represent the element with the inline setting, and the 2 blue lines represents the element with the inline block setting. Now, I said you will not be able to increase the width and height of an inline element. Now, let's check that. So this is an inline element. If I do this, I'm trying to increase the width. You can see that nothing changes. It's actually not increasing. If I try to increase the height, oh, sorry, that was the height. If I try to increase the height, nothing changes. If I try to increase the width, nothing changes on the green one, because no matter what you set on that in terms of width and height, it's never going to change the size. Let's look at the inline block. This is the height of the inline block. If I drag this, you can see the height continue increasing, and it will increase to as long as what you set it. So right now it's at 389 pixels. If I increase it further, you can see it increased to 497. If I bring it back to reduce it, it goes back to 143 pixels. The same thing with the width. If I increase the width of an inline block element, the width continues to increase for as long as you set it. So if I set it to about 998, 1000, it looks like this. So it can increase both in height and in width. You can see that. So your inline block, you can set height and width. Your inline element, you cannot set that. Now let's look at the block element. For the block element, you can increase the height. It keeps going. And for the width, you can also increase the width. Now, I said something. I said it occupies the default width of the page. What that means is that if your element has a smaller size, like we saw here,
It is small and it cleans the space.
Yeah. If it has a smaller size, like for example, when we have the hello, and it's not up to the end of the page, of the width of the page, it doesn't mean that if you keep adding hello, it will not accommodate it. It will keep accommodating as much as it can take. When it gets there, it goes to the next line. But what it means is that it will never allow another element to come and sit on this line with it. It will never allow another element to come and sit on this line with it. But as long as the length of this particular element keeps going, the width can still accommodate it. So sometimes we don't set width, but if you do set the width, it would take it. Just know that it would not take another element on the side, as against what we have for inline block. For inline block, you can keep setting the width of any of the elements, but as long as you add a new element, they will come on that same line. So I want us to grab those differences very well. So for the block, you can increase the height and you can increase the width as long as it doesn't allow anything to sit beside it. For the inline block, you can increase both the width and the height, but if any other element comes in, they can sit beside it. Okay, so those three properties are what we majorly use on an element to kind of position them and also set the sizes that we want them to occupy on a page. Any question, guys? If there are no questions, we've talked about the three types and we've looked at how they are being set. I did an example here because I'm not going to write an extra code for this. It's simple. Target the element you want to target, whether by class, by element, or by ID. Set a display property and define the display property you want to set on that. It's as simple as that when it comes to display. So, having seen that, I would want you guys to work on this small exercise right now. And it's the exercise 9.0 CSS display. This is what we're going to achieve. I already have these three boxes for you. What you're going to do is in two parts. The first part, you're going to set all of them to sit side by side. And the second part, you're going to get all of them to sit one after the other, to stack on top of one another. So red, green, blue, red, green, blue. And if you look into the code, under 9.0 CSS display, goal 1 is the one that goes horizontal, and goal 2 is the one that goes vertical. So if you look into the HTML code, I already have those codes for you, the red, the green, the blue. I want you all to take 5 minutes to do these two exercises. So the first one, do the goal 1, the horizontal. When you have that, screenshot it and post on class exercise. And then do the second one on the same code, screenshot and post. So you're going to, each person is going to post two answers. The first one for the goal 1, the second one for the goal 2. It's just by changing the display property on them. And then post here, 5 minutes. Yes?
I beg, this might be a silly question.
Okay.
But how do I set my default browser? Because when I do this live preview, it's taking me to what's that called? Do you people Safari thing?
Okay, so open your, and for everybody who has the same problem, open your Google Chrome right now. If you open Google Chrome, go here. There's this 3 carousel button on the top right corner. Go there and then go to settings. If you go to settings, you will go to default browser. So there's a default browser on the left here. Click on that. And then if Google Chrome is not your default browser, you see a way to set it right here.
Yeah, it says, I see mine, it says make default.
Yeah, so make default browser. If
are we sending only codes or just the picture aftermath? Are we sending only the code or the picture, just the picture after it's done?
So post the picture, send me the code. You for every exercise now, post the picture, DM me the code for the work.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's how to set default browser, guys. 5 minutes has started. We have 4 minutes left. And I'm going to open my Pomodoro and set it to 4 minutes.
Have a Pomodoro.
So here, guys, let's quickly solve it together. Thank you for attempting. If you have it resolved, send it. Otherwise, we'll solve it together right now. So we want to achieve this. the first one is to achieve them in a row. And remember, when we talked about if you want these elements to be able to align or be arranged on the same row, on the same line, you have two options. You either set them as inline or as inline block. Now, the difference between the inline and inline block is that for the inline, you would not be able to set width and height. Now, right now, we have the first one, which is red, to be in block, inline and inline block. If we want all of them to be on the same line, the two options we have is either to set all of them to inline, but if we set them to inline, remember that 200 by 200 pixels is already set, which is the width and height on this, so it will nullify the inline setting. In that case, we only need to set as inline block to be able to achieve them on a single row. So if I set all of them to be inline block, and I save it, what you would see is this. So all of them goes on the same line. Like I said, we can as well say we want to set it as inline, but remember, it will wrap. Okay, in fact, let's try that. So what if we use inline for all of them? Because inline will still put all of them on the same line. The difference is that it would nullify the width and height. So that case, we would not be able to see the exact size of those boxes. So if I set them to inline, this is what you see. So it doesn't look like what we are expecting, because like I said, it's only going to wrap the exact size of those elements. And in this case, you can see that it wrapped only the text. So you will know that we need to set them as inline block to be able to achieve the two. Put them on the same line, and at the same time, allow the sizes to be set. So that's,
question.
Yes.
If these elements were divs, and they had, because we have like H and P.
Yeah.
Right? If they were divs and they had like their width and height.
Yeah.
Would the inline leave them wrapped with the size of the div as opposed to the size of the letters?
So what you say is that if they are divs like this, so let's do this. I'm going to replace all the P with a div. So we replace all the P's with a div, and we're going to set them to inline, not inline block. And when I save it, this is what you see. So it's still going to be the same thing. It's going to kick out the div because it's already inline, and it will represent them as the size of the content of that div. Now, what if there's no content? What if there's no P inside those divs? You're not going to see anything. So let's say they don't have contents. So I'm going to take out the contents. And when you preview that, nothing shows up because there's no content. It only wraps the contents of the element. Once there's no content, everything goes. Even though there is color, there is everything, you're never going to see it. So regardless of the type of element it is, if you set the display to inline, it will only wrap the size of the content. Does that make sense, Jamja?
It does.
Okay. So that's for the first part. For the second part, who can tell me what I need to set the display to be able to achieve those things in vertical arrangement?
Block.
Right, block. So we set them to block. So we set them to block, all of them. And there's a reason. I saw somebody did their own, set 1, 2 to block, and left this as inline block. Of course, it will show as the same, it will show in the same way, but there's a problem with that. So right now, everything shows in block. Now, the difference between doing it this way, having all of them set to block, and leaving one of these as inline block is that even though they will still appear the same, but the difference is that the next element that comes after this is going to go on this line. It's not going to go down because you set that last element to be inline block. It means it can accommodate another element on its own line. So we have to be careful about that. That's not what you want on your website. You want all the three and any other thing that comes after that to go down. So all of them must be set to block. None of them should be inline block in this case. And when I set it back to inline block, you see there's another thing. See the difference between the elements are the same. When it was inline block, you can see it takes this away from these two. So the gap increases. So be sure that you don't make that mistake. All of them should be set to block. Any question, guys, on this exercise? If there is no question, if your code needs to be fixed, fix it, and let's move to the next thing. So the next thing, although a break is actually added here, but we spent 1 hour with just a single exercise. I'm going to skip this break. I'm sorry. If you need to take something, you can take it while I'm going. We'll come back for break. Sorry about that. I have to skip that break. So we're going to move to CSS flows. Now, what do we mean by CSS flows? When you need to wrap your text using the two keywords, float and clear. Now, I made an example of a newspaper here because that's the best thing that comes to mind to explain this. Now, if you look at these newspaper pages, you will see that we have something here. There's an image on this page, and after the image, this text starts on the same line with the image and wraps that image like that. Why is it that it's difficult for me to change this color except I exit? It's really a crazy thing. Okay. Now you can see the text now wraps this image like that. This is not something that comes by mistake. It is actually designed that way. And you can see it in so many places. In this case, you see there is a whole lot of text here. So that's a section. Now inside this section, there's an image placed somewhere here. There's another image placed somewhere here in such a way that somehow the texts are wrapping around those images. This is a typical example why we use floats. So there are times, or most of the times, when you're designing your website, maybe your personal website, maybe an e-commerce website, you want maybe a description to wrap around the image of that product, or you want your own biography or your background, whatever, your experience to wrap around an image. It could be your image, it could be any other image. How do you do this in website design? So that's when we use floats. So you can float images to the left, or float them to the right, or float them as you want. How do we now set that in a real CSS scenario? So let's say we have something like this. I removed the details here just to save some space. So we have an image on a page. In that case, this is the image. And then we have a paragraph text. So we have a paragraph that has some jargon, some text in it. So as you can see, the image comes before the text in terms of writing the code. And that's exactly the same thing you see here. You see the image first, and then you see the text comes after it. That's what you see naturally. Now, what if you want this text to now go and wrap around this image like that, like what we saw in the newspaper article? How do you do that? It's very simple. What you do is that on that image, and remember, this float has to be set on the elements you want to move. So in this case, we want to move our image to the left and allow the text to wrap around it. The simple thing to do is grab your image or target your image element, set the property called float, and decide where you want to float it to. So when you set float left on that element, on that image element, every other thing that comes around, that comes after the image, will wrap that image. It pushes the image to the left and wrap it like that. It's really simple. That's how you set it. And if you change that to right, this is what you're going to see. You will see the image on the right, and you will see the text that comes after it, wrapping it at the other side and bottom. So this is how we achieve these in CSS. Now, there are other methods that you can also use to achieve this. In fact, There are modern methods that we now use, which we're going to learn later, but this is the basics. It always defaults to the float property. So remember, when you're building your site, you can call the float property and set to right or left, depending on what you want to achieve on your website. Somebody is doing screenshots. You don't need it because this document is actually in your download. So you can always grab it from your download. Okay. Now, so that's how to set float property. And this is what you expect to see on float property. Now, something I want to explain to you is this. Typically, let's say you have an image, maybe some paragraph of text, that these lines are representing paragraphs, and this is an image, and then another image and some paragraph text. You can tweak this around as much as you want using that single property called float and clear. But right now, float. So let's say you have it this way by default, and you want to float things around. You can actually turn this same page to look like this. All you need to do is, on the first image, set float to be left. And on the second image, set float to be right. The moment you do that, this is what you're going to see. So you will see the text wrapping the first image and pushing it to the left, and text wrapping the second image and pushing it to the right. So as much as you have some images or some content on your page and you need to push them around, you only need to be setting the float property on those elements. Now you guys can start thinking of how—
Can we be specific with the height?
Sorry?
Can we be specific with the positioning per se? You know, all these ones are
default. So the positioning is still the same. Here, the image is not going to move up or bottom. It's only moving right and left. The second one is also going to move right and left. You're not moving them from here. You're not moving image 2 to go and show up here. No. It's still going to be on this line. The only difference is that you can move it right and left on that page.
Up and down.
Not up and down. You can't be changing their positions. If you must change their positions, then there have to be other properties you're going to call on that. In that case, you can be calling your display properties to be inline block or inline block as you want it. Yeah. Now, what I'm saying is you guys can start imagining how bits and pieces of a website come together. So you started from learning how to write a simple paragraph, a text, adding an image, adding a link. Now you are putting those things on the page and you are trying to move them around to arrange them as you want. So a website is already being built as we progress. Now, there are other situations where you have something like this, where you have an image on the left, which has been it has been floated to the left, and you have a paragraph on the right of it. Of course, it's going to wrap it. And you have another thing, maybe your footer, that is also wrapping the image. But because this is a footer, sometimes you don't really want footer to now align with the image again. You just want footer to be at the foot, like go below on the page, something like this. Now, how do you now do that? Because the moment you set the image to float left, every other thing after the image would wrap it around and go from the right to the bottom. Maybe when you now did that, your footer now goes to the side, but that's not what you want. How do you now change it? How do you bring your footer down, even though you have already set this to float left? Now, that's where the second keyword comes in, clear. So whenever you have an element on the page having a float property set to either left or right, and another element is now wrapping it or flanking it on the side, but that's not where you want that element to be. What you need to do to remove that element from wrapping the floating element is to set the clear property on that element. So an example. So this is what I'm trying to explain. Let's say you have an image, which is this image here. You have a paragraph text, which is here. This is the paragraph. And you have a footer, which is here. And because you already set the float on that image to be left, all of these two will wrap this image. But that's not what you actually want to see on your web page. Even though you want to float this to the left, you actually wanted only this footer, which is a copyright, maybe it's your copyright of your page. You want it to come below here. Now, how do you remove these and bring it down here without affecting the position of your image and every other thing? It is simply by setting the clear property on that element you want to move around. You want to move from where it is. You have to set clear property and determine where you want to clear it to. Now, the clearing is of three types. If this image has a float of left, and you want to clear the footer from wrapping that image, you set clear to left. If this is not left, if it was right, your footer has to be set to right as well. So wherever you float the image to is the same place you're going to clear whatever element you want to clear to, is the same side you're going to clear it to. So you need to take note of that. If you float your image to the left and you want to remove your footer from wrapping that image, you must clear it to the left. And the same thing happens if it is right. Now, what if you need to clear from more than one element? So a typical example. This is how a typical web page looks like. A web page will always have an header. In that header, maybe you have your company logo or something. Maybe you're going to have some navigation bars that one goes to home, one goes to contacts, one goes to as much as you want on your page. And then you probably have a sidebar. Yes, most of the websites you have seen, I'm sure, would have a sidebar. A typical example would be maybe an Amazon website or any other website. There's always something on the side. Maybe you can click, take it somewhere else. And then you have the main content. It doesn't matter. You may not have sidebar anyway, but let's just say a sample of a website. Then you're going to have the main content where all the items on the page would appear. And then you have a footer where you have copyright, address of the company, the directors, whatever you want to have there. They form the footer. Now, this is a typical web page. Now, let's now say that you float this. Of course, before you can achieve this, you know that based on what we've learned so far, you're going to float this to the left, right? And you're going to float this to the right. Now, because you float this and this to different sides, naturally, footer will not come down. It will go and hang in between them because it is trying to wrap them, right? It's going to hang in between the sidebar and the main content. Now, but that's not where you want it to be. You want it to come down. And we're going to see this in code. Don't worry. You want that footer. You don't want it to be in between those two sections because they are supposed to stand on their own. And the footer is supposed to come down. Now, how do you clear it from the two left and right? Remember I said, if you float an element to the left, you clear to the left. If you float an element to the right, you clear to the right. But in this case, you have floated an element to both the left and the right. Now, where do you clear the footer to? That way, in that case, you're going to clear it by setting the property clear, and you write both. Okay? So you're going to clear both. You're not going to clear right or left in this case. Rather, you're going to clear both. And that's what will bring your footer down. Does it make sense, guys?
I was going to say clear center, but I'll take both.
Okay. Don't clear center. Just clear both. Just clear both, okay? Don't clear.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to clear both. And that way, we would see the footer comes to the bottom. I think it's simple enough. Yeah. So let's quickly look at this 9.1 exercise, guys. It's simple. What you guys need to do for me.
It's not possible for the footer to go to the top, Abi.
No, it's not going to go to the top. Once you clear it, it comes down. It starts naturally, yeah. So we're going to quickly lay our hands on writing CSS float code. what you're going to achieve at the end of the day is going to look like this. So we are going to have, I will explain this. We have two sections in this page. This is one section. In that section, there is a header, there is an image, and there is a paragraph. Section 2 has the same thing. There is a header, there is an header, image, and a paragraph. This is aligning, this is wrapping the text, the image. This is also wrapping the image. But the two of them are staying separately. Okay, so one is to the left and one is to the right. And then we have a footer that just sits confidently or comfortably in the bottom of the page. That is what you're going to achieve. That is the goal. Now, let's go to the code. And we have 9.1 CSS floats, if you are with me. You would see I have in my 9.1 CSS float, I have some images for you so you don't have to worry about grabbing the image. I already put the image in the items, and there's a goal that I just showed you. So this is the goal that you're going to achieve again, just to see it. Now, this is index.html. We have all the codes here. All I want you to do for me is just to update the CSS styling to achieve that. So right now, if I preview this, this is what you're going to see. So if I open this, which you can do on your side as well, if you open this HTML, index.html using the live server, and I'm going to bring it because it keeps opening in another browser. Maybe I should close this stupid browser so that I can open right here. This is what you're going to see. So right now, this is the way it looks. And you can see that this is not matching our end goal. Our end goal is that this text must wrap this image, this text must wrap this image, and the entire green section should float left, while the entire orange section should float right, and this one will sit at the bottom of all of them. It's as simple as that. So,
and there will also be that gap.
Which gap?
The where you were drawing before, there was a gap between the two sections.
So let me check this one. You mean this gap?
Yes.
Yeah, so at the moment you float them right and left, the gap would come in automatically. You don't have to add a div or add any gap yourself. Just make sure that these two, each of them stays on the side, on opposite sides or opposite ends. That's all. Simple. So guys, look into the code and spend the next 7 minutes.
But 10 now.
10? Okay.
21155. What's going on? Is it because you did not come and meet only one person in class? We can go for vacation though. You have
Okay.
to deal with those of us that are here.
Okay. So spend the next 10 minutes. That's not coming from my heart, but spend the next 10 minutes. I was forced to give 10 minutes. So spend the next 10 minutes, guys, to rearrange this code so that we can achieve that goal, this goal on that. So 10 minutes, I'm going to set the timer. If you have any question, you can ask, but I'm going to set the timer to 10 minutes. Short, long, short, long. So let's make the short 10 minutes. All right, and the time starts now. All right. Let me know if you have any question, guys. Thank you. After this, we'll go for break. Delicious, yo.
Sorry, yeah.
Okoko float you.
Bomile lori.
I give me this principle.
Pour water make it float now.
Do Archimedes. Are we sending the code to you or it doesn't?
Yeah, of course, as usual. Send me the code for that, and yeah, and post the solution in class exercise. Oh. Alamin, are you in this class today? You've been quiet.
Yes, I am, sir.
Bob?
Yeah, I'm in class.
Okay, great. Majid, are you back? Where am I going? There. Okay. Yeah, he said he was on the road or something.
Then others.
Yep.
I laid my hands on the positioning. So I observed that when you use absolute, just like this first example we have here, where we have the grids, our colors on the horizontal. I noticed immediately I gave the first box, the first div, the absolute position.
Mm-hmm.
The remaining ones, it's like it's missed a spot. So the three now shifted underneath it. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying. I have 4 boxes, vertically stacked.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately I assigned absolute to the first box.
Mm-hmm.
I observed that the second one took the place of the first.
Mm-hmm.
The third took the place of the second, and like that.
So where
only that.
Mm-hmm. So where is the first?
The first is still maintain this position.
But the second one,
the
second one moves.
Yeah, underneath it.
And every other thing moves there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you set it to absolute, what you're doing literally is you are removing it from position.
From position, okay.
You remove that box from position already. And
okay.
Because it's no more there, it's now somewhere, it's I don't want to use the word is floating, but actually it's actually like it's floating.
It's floating actually.
Yeah, it's floating. So its position now must get occupied by the next element. That's why I said the difference between setting that property and using a margin is that margin will still leave that space. Even though the element has been moved because of margin, the space is still there. Nothing must move there. But because you're setting this one as position, that space is lost. Because the moment you move that, you set that position absolute, it removes that element from position.
And as if it's not part of it.
Occupy that position.
All right.
That's why elements can overlay on one another, because they are actually now floating. They are not occupying their original position again.
Okay.
Yeah.
My own is not showing gap. I've done the left one.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them seem to be left.
Both of them goes to the left.
The wrapping.
Yeah, they are both on the left, yes.
Well, mine is, you see the gap in between is not showing like that.
The gap in between is not showing. So where is this gap showing? It's showing on this side?
No,
Check the dog. Check the dog, Jem. Check your dog, your dog, whatever, CSS. So I think it's the dog you are supposed to move to the left, to the right. You worked on the div before. I don't know whether you get it.
So this.
Check your dog.
Yeah. You need to float the dog itself. You are floating. It looks like you are floating the div, not the dog. You're floating this div dog, but you need to float this dog. This one.
Won't I be linking like to say which of the images I'm doing, like to say maybe dot class and then that image,
Dot class that image.
like the class, like the dot dog
Mm-hmm.
and the brace,
And then grab the image.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because otherwise, if I just style, I can just style image since both of them are left.
Yeah, style.
Exactly.
I was thinking one was left and one was right before. That's why I was trying to.
They're both left.
Okay, so
Just grab image and style and float it left. It's as simple as that. But of course, there are so many ways to do it. Now it depends on which smart or the smartest of all the methods of doing it. What's the time? Tell me.
yeah, so my own gap is still not coming to the middle.
Yeah, your screen.
Use bamboo to separate it. Push bamboo.
This is not acceptable. Can't be telling students to go and find bamboo.
You can get bamboo now. You are in Vancouver, right? There are bamboos. Yeah.
No, I'm not in Vancouver. I'm in Okene, please.
Bamboo plenty for Canada. You just you do whichever side.
I don't like that you know Okene so well. It's quite annoying.
You do whichever side. You go grab one.
How do you even know whichever, for God's sake? Okay, let's see.
Dile kí ló ń ṣẹlẹ̀ má fọ mi lẹ́nu náà ìwọ ló kọ́kọ́ sọ mí lẹ́ẹ̀kan náà ó yẹ kó sọ mí.
Kò float lọ direction fẹ́ kó float dáadáa. Mò ń wá bóyá máa float báyìí.
Oní jack lọ́yọ̀ jack wájú jack mọ́tò ẹ̀ kò gbé jack sí lábẹ́ kò jack ẹsẹ̀.
Do not kill me, please. I'm not even understanding what's happening here right now.
Ó kàn kó float yo. It's as if mo mọ̀ bí wọ́n fi float yọ̀ wọ́n gan sí because.
The float should go on image, okay? It will go on the image, right? Once you float the image, everything around the image or after the image will wrap that image automatically. You remember?
Okay.
So the image should be the one that gets the float property, right? Automatically, everything would wrap it. Okay.
One question.
Because I don't understand. If we're supposed to set clear for the footer didn't even go in the middle in the first place.
My own footer is on top, like umbrella.
Your own what is on top?
The footer now.
How did he make to take it to the top?
That's how my own floated to the top. I had to bring it back. What are you doing there?
You will need anchor. You need anchor. You know anchor that we used to plug orange. You drag it down.
What pressure to what I say?
All right, guys. Let's solve this. Let's solve it, please. Okay. That's fun, actually. All right. So this is what we have right now, and we want to just achieve that. We want to achieve, where's that goal? We have
to use apps app.
So the first thing we want to do is let's handle the two divs separately. So let's handle the first div. But one thing that is common to them is, like Jem said, is that the images are both floated to the left. So it makes life easy for us. So the first thing I am going to do, if I'm solving this problem, is to target the image and float it left. So I'll come here and just target image and set float property and float it left. Now, doing that alone should make what happen? Go float you.
At all. You
have
you saved?
Yes.
Have you saved?
Are you targeting the right? Are you targeting the right image?
Oh yeah.
I just
Wait.
exactly what
Wait, Gary.
So we have to target the right
Wait. I wrote in a different code, Gary. Let's go here. This is where we are working, not that one. Sorry, I put it in a different file. So if you target the image and float it to the left, the first thing you will see is that the text would wrap that image automatically. So it's already wrapping. Kaji, it's wrapping already. Now that's the first part. The second part is we want to float each div to opposite ends. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the divs. Now, the first div is cat. The second div is dog. So it's as simple as going onto cat and floating it left.
Also, we're also floating the divs.
Yes.
No. That's why I said you take the dog now.
And then you go to the dog and float it right. And like I said, this is going to go to the center because it's trying to wrap both of them. But you don't want it to wrap both of them. You don't want it to be like Alamin's umbrella. Like you said, we need to drag it down. We need to bring it down because it's supposed to be a footer and arranging itself on the bottom of those elements or on the bottom of the page. So how do we do that? We have to clear where? Where do we clear it?
Clear
both. Yeah. So we go to footer.
And issues because all I did was the first image float, and then I did set the clear on the footer. Although I noticed it didn't move in the first place. Is that floating of the divs that?
Yes.
Not,
so if you clear both,
but at us,
yes.
I tried using that idiot's footer, and the thing came down with left alone. I don't know whether I did both actually, but I tried using left.
So if you clear it left alone, right now, because there are no other elements apart from these two, and there are no other elements after this, it will look like it's correct, but it's actually not correct. The moment you add another element, it will scatter everywhere. It will move, it will throw it to the center again, or it will put it only restricted below the green one. Okay, so let it be both because you are clearing from both divs, and that's when you would achieve this. So this is the simple solution, guys, to this. So correct your code. We only added 3 things. We added image, we floated left, we floated the cat div to left and the dog div to right. And then we clear the footer.
May I quickly delete this thing where I upload before anybody see
upload.
I don't see Alamin. I cannot see.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
All right, guys. So you can make adjustment to your code now and get that. If there is no other question, we'll take 5 minutes.
I have a question before you take your break.
Okay, go ahead.
We're discussing float in the context of we usually have these kinds of elements and want them something to wrap around them, right? How did we go from there to what is wrapping around the divs that we floated?
Every other element after that thing you are floating. So in this case, we floated the image. What do we have after image? A paragraph. The paragraph is what would wrap around the image.
What about the div that we floated?
Which div? So when we floated the div, what do we have after the div? The footer. That's why the footer was trying to struggle in between the two divs because it's trying to wrap them. So anything you float, whatever you have next to that thing is what will be wrapping what you are floating. So in this case, we floated the divs.
So it's not always going to be an image and with words having to wrap
it doesn't have, no. I said you are going to add the float property to the elements you want to move. So whether it is a div, whether it's an image, whether it's whatever it is that element you want to move around that gets that property float. Okay. The one you want to remove from wrapping is what gets the clear property. So float, clear.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Welcome. Okay, guys. All right. We're going to continue with responsive websites. if you all remember, on our first day, I think on our first class, I made mention of responsive websites. It's all about making website look good on all screen sizes. So when you're building a website, you're not just building that website with the thinking or the thoughts that the only people that will be viewing that website will be on a computer. You have to remember that some people will view that on a desktop of different screen sizes. Some are going to view it on a laptop, of course, of different screen sizes as well. Some will be viewing that website on an iPad or a tablet, and others will be viewing it on phones of different screen sizes. Now, you want to give all of them the same experience, regardless of the size of the screen they are using. How do you build your website in such a way that regardless of the screen sizes or the device they are using, they all get the same experience as to your website? You have to know that if you do not do anything, if you just build your website with the thought that everybody will be seeing the same thing on a large screen, what happens is that people on a smaller screen, they will be seeing like squishy website. Everything will be squishy together. Things, the distances will be odd. They will not even be able to comprehend the website, except they are on a big screen, because that's what you've had in mind when you're building. But that's not the standard practice. So the way we build websites from the start of that website is that you have to know that some people will be viewing on different screen sizes. Now, there are standard screen sizes that we use. So regardless of what device they are using or the model or the product they have in their hands, there are standard screen sizes that every device would conform to. So there are standard screen sizes for mobile screen. There are standard screen sizes for tablet screen, for desktop, and others. So those are the major things you would see. But in some situations where we need to go extra detailed, you have to now do beyond the standard sizes and add some more screen sizes that are regular. And as a web developer, we have to pay attention to the markets. We pay attention to device markets. As you're building applications, you know when there's a new types of screen that is out, so that you would see if on your next project you need to take you need to put that into consideration or not. So those are one of the things that we need to always keep tabs of as a developer. Now, how do we now design websites to be responsive? As you can see here, this is the same website on different sizes of the screen. You can see that the desktop and the laptop looks close, very close, almost the same. But the iPad and the phone looks different. Some elements have been shifted. Some would even be removed completely. Now, a typical example I'm going to show you would come from this website. This website is right now built to be very responsive, and we're going to see that in action. I will send you guys this website if you want to do what I'm doing right now, just to have that feeling. I'll post the website on the general channel rather. So if I minimize this page right now, and I have the control of the size of the screen, I want you all to pay attention here, guys. If I try to minimize, you can see right now the way the screen is arranged. If I try to minimize the size of this screen, you can see how things start shrinking in by themselves. Initially, the size of these fonts were very big. The moment I start to reduce this, the sizes start adjusting themselves to the screen size. Now, this is not happening by magic or by default. It is the way the website was designed. So in other words, the designer of this website has put that into consideration, that the sizes of items on this page would change according to the size of the screen. Now, at some point when I have this, you can see that if you look at here, these items you see here, the tab items, Whole Foods, over on and all that, you see at some point it will disappear. So look at it. So when it's big, the items are there, and when I move it smaller, it disappears. Can you see now, guys? It actually left and it's back now because I made it bigger. When I make it smaller again, it
But
disappears.
there's a point that it shows on the sides.
Yes, I wanted to grab that point, but it's really hard to make a stop at that point. So at some point, it comes to the side. That is actually what they designed for iPad screen. So what it means is if this screen goes, if this website is being viewed on an iPad, you will see that thing moving away from there and coming here. Now, you can also see that when those items leave the page, something shows up, which is this. Initially, it was not there. So watch. If I make it bigger, that is not there anymore. Then the element comes back, the tabs. But the moment the element leaves, it becomes a collapsible carousel. So this is what you have here. Now, you can, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. When you click this, then it shows those items on the left, arranged here. And you can also close it. So you can either open it or close it. So this is a responsive website. Now, that's actually because we are seeing something that looks like an iPad or a tablet screen size. If we keep making it, if we keep reducing the screen size, you'll see some other changes. So let's say I make it an something like a mobile device now, like a phone. If I click on this, you see these elements now occupy the entire screen, unlike what it looks like when we were looking at a much bigger screen, which is on the side. The moment it goes to a mobile view, then everything arranges themselves at the center and then covers the entire page. This is what we call responsive websites. So because if you try to show it like this on a mobile phone, you're not going to be able to see all of this arranged like that because of the screen size of the mobile phone. So when you're designing, although this is actually not going to be your own major concentration, this is the job of the UI UX designer. But when the UI UX designer tells you what they want the behavior to be, you have to code it. You have to add the code to achieve that behavior. Another thing you can see is in my Otugbege website that I have here, don't mind me, the same thing happened here. So if you right now it's a big screen, you can see home, about, work, skill, testimonial, and contact. The moment I reduce this screen to a mobile size, you can see that those things have left, and now we have a carousel. And then it throws open on the right side, and it comes in a very slow manner, right? Just to give some user experience effect. So you can have different way you want to achieve this, but the key thing is you want to make sure that what is available to somebody viewing your website on a desktop is also available, or almost all available, to somebody viewing your website on another screen type. There's something I wanted to see again. Initially, there's this search button on this page. Now, when I reduce this size to mobile, okay, it's actually still there, but then it comes open as a different format from what we have on the main page. I was looking at this yesterday, and I kind of note some differences. Okay, still behave the same way. Okay, don't worry. What I'm trying to show here is that you can move things around as you want. You can change some behaviors as you want. What is important is make sure that you give the same experience to somebody using your website on a different screen size. And that's what we're going to learn how to do today. But one caveat, guys. The caveat is that I am not going to teach this in detail. And there's a reason for that. At this point, I'm going to give you the overall concept, the overview. And most of it, you guys are going to take home as part of your assignment. So you're going to learn some things on your own. You're going to do some exercises. You come back to the next class with those exercises and assignment. You would have submitted them. You would have shared them on the page like we had before. In the next class, if you guys have any questions, you will note them down and ask me, and I can explain. If I see any concept that you guys didn't really catch, then I will go over that concept briefly to explain it. So today, what we're going to do on those responsiveness is this. There are different ways in which we can achieve those responsiveness that I just displayed to you guys. Several ways. One of them is the use of media queries. So we write media queries in form of a CSS to achieve those things by targeting different screen sizes that we can have and defining how we want those behaviors to be. That's one. Two, by using what is called CSS grid. So we can try to achieve, like, for example, an arrangement. Let's say you have a lot of cards, and on the website, you have them arranged in maybe rows and columns, and probably you have four columns on that page and multiple rows, because the screen is big. But when the screen gets reduced to a smaller size, you want it to change from four columns to maybe 2, just to accommodate that. Maybe when it goes to a mobile screen, then you want the 4 columns to collapse to a single column and have more rows. So in other words, you're trying to find a way to still accommodate your content on the screen size that they have. So you have to target those sizes. And when you do that, you can use CSS grid to do that. And you all see how CSS looks like. You're going to learn CSS grid, but I'm going to show you an overview. Another method we use is called CSS Flexbox. This Flexbox is very, very useful. It helps us to move things around on the page the way you want it to show. If you want what you want somebody viewing on a mobile to see might be different from what you want somebody viewing on a desktop to see. Although it's going to be the same content, but the arrangement will be different, just to make it easy for all of them to be able to consume your content. So we can use CSS Flexbox by defining some rows and columns and then some properties on those rows and columns as well. Finally, we can use an external framework called, there are many of them actually. The most common one, and maybe the first one, is Bootstrap. Unfortunately, nobody uses Bootstrap like that again today, because Bootstrap is gradually going into extinction. But there are more than 1 billion projects out there that was built on Bootstrap. So you can find yourself having to work on a project that uses Bootstrap. Bootstrap is supposed to be part of our curriculum, but like I said in the last class, I'm going to skip it and move to JavaScript. And at some point, you guys are going to learn it on your own and work with it in class. But yeah, one of them is Bootstrap. Like I said, there are lots of other ones that are now being used. In fact, right now there is what's called Material UI, which is very common and in most of the modern projects, easier to use and has more properties to call, more classes to call. So these 4 types are the common method through which we achieve responsiveness. Now, the first one, the media query. How do we even do media query to achieve responsiveness on the website? It's simple. We are going to be writing something that looks like a CSS that we've been writing before. But the difference here is that initially, when we are writing CSS, we are targeting something like an element, maybe a P, a div, or an image, or whatever, or we are targeting the class or an ID, right? In this case, we are not targeting any of those. We're going to write in this format. At media, we're going to open a braces. We're going to call, let's say, for example, you want every screen that has the sizes between 0 and 600 pixels to have a particular set of properties. You are going to have max width. So max width means as much as the width does not go beyond 600 pixels, open your braces. All the CSS that you want to write, everything you want to happen for that particular screen size would go inside here. So say, for example, you want that when somebody view your website on a phone or the mobile phone, which is less than 600 pixels, the header text should not be more than 20 pixels. Then you can set your header text right here, H1 or whatever it is, H1, and then set font size 20 pixels. So all the CSS code that you were writing before, that you were writing inside your normal CSS file, you will now have to wrap them with this thing, because you only want those ones to be applicable to devices that have maximum width or screen size width. When I say screen size, we are actually referring to width, not height. So forget about the height of any screen size. Screen sizes, we are referring to the width of that screen size. So every screen size that has the maximum size or maximum width of 600 pixels, the H1 on those that the users will see, or the headers, will be 20 pixels. Now you can change this to be minimum mean width of 900, meaning that every device that is bigger than or equal to or larger than or equal to 900 pixel, maybe you want the headers to have 60 pixel. I don't know if this is making sense to you guys. What we're trying to do is that you're trying to define different properties for different sizes of screen. It is one of the ways by which we achieve what you saw when I was doing this thing here. So somebody the person that designed this website must have said, okay, the moment this thing goes below a particular size, reduce the font sizes, or move this thing from left to right, or remove the list of items here. So inside that media query, if they used media query, you will just go and grab display for that and call it none. So those lists would leave the page, it would disappear from the page. So this is a typical way through which we do media query. Now, I am not teaching media query, guys, because I want you guys to learn it on your own. I have given you guys, because at this stage, I want to start releasing your hands gradually to be able to pick things up and learn them. Yes, Julius, what's the idea?
I want to ask a question.
Right.
So we have the media queries set for more than one at the same time.
Yes.
You know, like we have on the screen now. This is, let's say we have the 600
yes.
pixel.
Yes.
Then another one was okay. All right.
Yes. The answer is yes. You can have as many as possible media queries on your page. In fact, you can have media query inside media query. Okay. That's an advanced thing anyway. But yeah, you can have multiple media queries depending on what you are targeting in your CSS code. You can target different sizes. As a matter of fact, it doesn't have to be only min width or max width. You can have between this and this. So it can be between 600 and 900. There's a way to write that query as well. And those are the things I want you guys to learn from that video that I'm going to give you much later. So just know that to use media, you can lower your hand, Julie. To use media query to achieve screen responsiveness or a website responsiveness, this is how it looks like. You're going to be writing queries or media queries for different screen sizes and be adding your CSS inside those queries to determine what you want the users to see when they are building that website. So this one is saying CSS for screens below or equal to 600 pixels wide. That's media query. The next one we will be looking at is CSS grid. Now, this if you guys are looking at this particular one here, one of these websites that will come to regular shoppers will be Amazon, because this is actually how Amazon arrange their products on their web page. That's a grid format. We call it grid format. Now, you can say that, why do we need to learn CSS grid again? After all, we've learned display, and we can do display inline. We can do display inline blocks. The truth is, that can only work for a few elements that you're working with. When you have a website like Amazon, where you have more than 100 million products that are going to be stacked, do you want to start assigning inline blocks to 100 million products? No. So in that case, you're going to need to use what is called CSS grid. Because with CSS grid, you can group elements together, items together, and throw them into a grid. And they will just, by themselves, arrange themselves in a grid. Doesn't have to be this format alone. There are other formats that you can do. These are other formats. All of these can be easily achieved using a CSS grid. Like I said, it doesn't mean that you cannot achieve them using your display inline block or inline. The only thing is that if you do that, the website that would take me 1 day or 3 days to build would take you 100 years to build, because you're going to have to keep doing that. Okay, so that's these are some of the things that we can achieve using the CSS grid. And using this method, it can help you to actually, so one thing is, if you use grid, there's a way you can set your grid that the moment the screen becomes reduced in size, the number of grids or number of columns will rearrange themselves. Once the screen discovers that there are more elements, it throws them below. It keeps stacking them below like that. So it gives you that experience of responsiveness when the user is using your website. So, and it can happen in different ways. You can see that all of these are different designs depending on what you want to achieve on those screens. So that's one other thing. And how do you set CSS grid? How do you assign them to your HTML and CSS code?
Questions are.
Huh?
Question.
Yeah.
Please, I want to confirm something, though this might not be part of what we are doing in class. So the media query and okay, so when we were setting our, what do you call this, our HTML, what do you call this thing, our doc type, what do you call it, boilerplate.
Yeah.
I noticed that there's a place where you have width and stuff like that, and I read at one point that you can set the size of the screen. That once you set that, it will make it responsive. I don't know how applicable it is to what we are doing now.
The screen size you see on boilerplates, is only what the job of that where is the CSS HTML code is. The screen size you see somewhere here in your boilerplate, what it does is that it helps your browser. So the moment your website gets loaded is about to get loaded on the browser needs to figure out, am I loading this on the full page or half of the page or just small on the page? In other words, what I'm saying is this. So this is your, I need to draw. So this is the size of your screen, whether you're using a desktop or laptop or whatever. Now, and this is the browser view. Now, that viewport that you set on the boiler, that is being set on the boilerplate, the job is doing is that it is checking, am I rendering this page to this website to fill the page, or I just need to render the whole website like this, a small window on my page, or I need to render it like half of the page, or half like this, like that. So that's what that is doing. It is not actually responding to the size of the screen. It is only checking the code. How do they want me to render this page? Whether on mobile or laptop or desktop or whatever, or tablet, am I rendering it to cover the entire page? Or I am just putting it small on the page. And if I can remember a typical example, if I find something, I will show you guys. There are some websites that so for example, somebody built a website in Drupal or WordPress. You guys have heard WordPress before. WordPress are low-code content management system that some people say they know how to build websites because they can use WordPress to build a website. When you use WordPress or Drupal to build a website, you're not actually writing code. You're not doing anything. What you're doing is you're dragging items and dropping on the page. Oh, I need search bar. You drag search bar, drop it. Oh, I need a card that can show product. You drag a card and put image on it. So that's what they do. Now, we have some Drupal or WordPress websites that have been old. Maybe some universities, a lot of universities actually use WordPress. Like maybe even LASU, I think LASU used WordPress then. But then they don't want to cancel that page. They still want that page to work, but they want to embed a JavaScript normal one that we're writing now with code. They want to embed on that Drupal or WordPress website. They don't want it to cover the entire page. They just want something to show somewhere maybe on the bottom part of the page differently, and it's a new part. It's not part of the Drupal, it's just new. That's where viewport comes in. So they will set the viewport to occupy a particular section of the page, and that's what everything they see here is coming from, maybe React or Angular or Vue.js or whatever it is coming from. It's not part of that page. That's when they use viewports. I'm not going to explain too much for that because it's beyond what we should be learning in this class, but just take it that that's not the same thing as responsiveness. So responsiveness is telling your code that whenever you find a different screen size, reduce this or move this from here to here or take this out of the page and all that. That's what we do for that. All right. Now, we've talked about media query, we've talked about CSS grid. The next one is Flexbox. This almost the same thing we do with grid, we do with Flexbox, but there are lots of discrepancies. There are a lot of differences between the two of them. With flex boxes, you can do quite a lot. You can set if you want your items to be arranged in a row. So even though there are more than 1,000 items, before, when we're talking about display and we're talking about inline and inline whatever, I said when it gets to the end of the screen width, it will throw them down. That's not the same with flexbox. If you set under your flexbox setting, if you set flex direction to be row, like you see here, flex direction can be row, can be column, can be row reverse, can be column reverse. So row means arrange all my elements in a row like this. Row, row, row. Column means arrange them like this. Column, column, column. Now, row reverse means I want them to be row, but make the first element go to the back. I mean, rearrange them to come from the back. Instead of coming from 1 to 10, let it come from 10 to 1, right? And column reverse, the same thing. Reverse my column for me. You can do aligning items. You can align to start. So all the items will align themselves to the start of the page. You can do align to center. They will have a common center. You can do flex end. Then they can have the same ending. So the reverse of flex start, and the reverse of flex start is flex end. And you can do stretch. Stretching means stretch these elements to occupy this particular space. There are lots of them you can set on that. And these are the things you guys are going to be learning in those videos. I have short videos to give you guys to learn. They're not going to be hard. You just need to pay attention and make sure you go through those videos. They will help you. The idea behind this is, apart from learning from Latas, you're going to learn yourself. You're going to know how to pick up videos on YouTube to learn something quickly and grab from it. Because it's not every time you're going to be learning and somebody will be displaying PowerPoint before they code. You might be just jumping into code completely. And that's one of the things you're going to see. All right. So, my people, we have come to the point where I need to talk about these tasks, these interesting tasks I want you guys to work on during the course of the week. So I have sorry. I saw an error. I need to correct that.
Don't talk. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So I have Alami, Meshonu. I have these 4 tasks that I want you guys to do that has subtasks. And I'll be glad if you guys can go through them because you learn a lot from it. The first one is going to be on media query. There's going to be a small project. And there is going to be the one on CSS Flexbox. And the one on CSS Grids. The only one that is missing here is the Bootstrap, which we are not going to cover in this class. Okay? And we'll find the appropriate time to see if we can cover Bootstrap. So it's only this one that we're not going to cover. Okay? Because it's not so important right now. Trust me. So we're going to be covering media query. You have a small project to do. There's CSS Flexbox. Inside CSS Flexbox, there's a project as well. And then CSS Grids. Now, I want you guys to try as much as possible to cover all of this, if you can. If you cannot, please cover at least 2. In other words, cover media query and Flexbox. And then we can find time to cover grids again. Because next class, like I said, we are doing capstone. So now let's go through this one by one together. So on media query, I have attached a YouTube video here that I want you guys to learn media query from. Sorry. This thing, I like to worry my life. How do I remove it now? I don't want pen again. Okay. So here we are going to look at this video. This first YouTube video on media query, this is it. I selected good videos for you guys that would help you to learn fast and quick. This is the one on media query, and this is about come on, adverts. All right. So this is on media query, and this is going to help you a lot. This guy is very good, and he explains better. That's for media query. So when you watch this, then you guys would work on exercise 9.3 on media query. So let's look at that. So 9.3. So before you go to that, sorry guys, before you go to that, I put a playground here for you guys if you have some time. This responsiveness. I just want you guys to see what I did here. Initially, I prepared this that we're going to teach it in class, but no, I changed my mind on this. So you can go through this code, play around with it. You can preview them to see what they look like. So if I preview this one, index.html, and what I want you guys to do when you are playing around is to view the codes, see what they look like. So on this one, there's media queries, how this one is being done. If you go into the media query, you will see what I wrote. So after you must have watched the media query video, you can come back here, see what I did here, just to understand a little bit. So I wrote some media queries for you guys here to explain this.
Sorry,
yeah.
How we got here?
You don't know how we got here. You were not in this class, Jem? You were eating, Abi?
These groups. No, I've been sitting here.
I catch you. You were eating. Okay. So this is how I got here. I said I was trying to go through this one by one. So the first thing I want you guys to do.
I got this. It's like when you went through this.
So I now said here under responsiveness 9.2.
Right.
I put a playground here just for you to, after you must have watched the video, for example, on media query. Right. I have a code here that shows media query, an example of a media query. If you are scared of writing your own code, of course, I know you can, as you're watching the video, you have to code along. So you may not need to come back to it. But if you need to, I wrote some example media query here that can help you to see what this is doing. So one of the skills you guys need to build is picking up a code, going through it and understanding what the code is doing. So at this level, I don't think this will be too much for you to go through and understand. That's on media query. On grid, I did an example here as well. You can see what I did here. And how do you see the code for this? Just go to grid. You can see where I wrote the code.
Sorry. This group 1 and group 2 thing, we don't have it.
Which one is group 1 and group 2?
To the left of your stuff, where you have group 1, group 2. On top, up, stop. Yeah.
So you're not going to have it now. This is just VS Code doing its thing. This is just VS Code doing its thing. It has nothing to do with what we're doing. What we're working on is lesson 9. And everything is lesson 9, yeah.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, so you can, when you watch the grid, you can come back here and check the grid and kind of preview my code and see what I did to have a better understanding if you need to. Otherwise, what you need is those videos that I've attached for you. So if you get that video, you go and if you watch the media query video, before you watch the next one, go and do 9.3 exercise, media query, and that's here. So there's a single file in 9.3 media query, and I'm going to show you guys what that looks like in a moment. So right now, media query looks like this. Show preview. It looks like this. There must be a goal. Where is the goal? The goal is lost. Okay. The instruction here is this. To do, change the background color for each device. If it is if it's mobile device, change it to light salmon. If it's iPad and tablets, change it to powder blue. If it is laptops, change it to light green. If it is desktop, change it to sea green. What this means is that if you are able to write the correct CSS code for this, if you preview this on a desktop, so we're going to preview using live server. So to preview this on the live server, this is what it is right now. But if you are able to write your CSS code correctly, the moment you start reducing the size of the screen, the color keeps changing. So when it gets to mobile, you're going to see a different color. Like I said, when it's mobile devices, target this screen size. I want to see light salmon. So the color will change from what it is right now to light salmon. If you bring it to an iPad sizes, like something like tablet size, you're going to be seeing something that looks like lime green or powder blue, powder blue for iPad and tablets. For laptop screen sizes, you're going to see lime green. For desktops, which is bigger screen, because you're going to be setting these screen sizes, you're going to see sea green. So sea green is what it is right now, I believe. But the moment you start reducing the screen sizes, the color will start changing. That is what you're going to do after watching this video on media query. Okay, guys. Now, when you're done with that, you have a small project to do. This project is a web design agency project. So, for example, we have agencies that the job they do is to build websites for companies. So we call them web design agencies. And that's what you're going to be on this project. You're going to be a web design agent that will build a website. Now, how does that look like? Or what does that look like? That is on 9.4. So I already gave you most of the items you need. I already gave you the images you need. I gave you logo. So the logo is going to be DevCon. Now, what you are going to achieve in this is going to look something like this. Like this. Where is it? Where is it? This is what you're going to build. So this is what it looks right now if you preview that page. But the goal is that there is going to be a different arrangement when you are viewing this on a desktop. And there's going to be a different arrangement when you are viewing it on a laptop. So let me look for, I think I have the goal, so I don't want to mistakenly expose the code. So I'm being careful. Sorry.
I can see how careful you're being. Even clicking the link.
I can't even screen grab already. You go jam I screen grab well, let's get it.
Anyway, he's gently clicking. May not click when it wrong. Well, yeah, you can see my shower cap.
I don't want to mistakenly expose what I'm not supposed to expose yet. So the goal for this, I'll look for the goal. Hold on.
Okay.
That's why there's another screen now. True. When they wind me. Let me carefully look for it here, and I'll drag it down there. What are you saying, Jimmy?
Well, at times I know you.
You don't
always cover your book when you were in the university now. You don't always cover your book. Why are you doing this to us? Let us see.
I'm covering now. Okay, I don't see the what I want you guys to achieve. Let's go to the code. Wait. Okay, I have it. Well, I have it, guys. Let me preview it, and I'll give it to you guys quickly. Yes. So this is what that page is going to look like on and I'm going to demo it right now. This is the final work. So on a desktop, this is what you're going to see, this arrangement. Okay. And when you reduce the size of this screen, so right now, look at this. You see, as I'm reducing it, it's rearranging the text, it's rearranging things to fit in the screen. And the moment it goes to mobile, it changes that arrangement to a single column. So before it was on a desktop and on an iPad, it's going to be double column. It's going to fit into the page. And at some point, the text starts to wrap. You can see that the text is wrapping around the image. And when it goes to mobile, it becomes a single column, right? This is what we're going to achieve for that project. That's mini design agency project. I already gave you all the things you need, the images, the text. You only need to add your CSS responsiveness to make the web behave like this. Okay, guys. So yeah, I'm previewing from the solution I already did. So you guys will get it. Trust me, those videos are very helpful. So this is what you're gonna work on for that small project. Where's the code again? For that small project, that's what you're gonna work on. It's gonna, I think I should be adding for you guys the expected image, right? The goals.
Exactly. It's missing. 9.4 is missing. 9.3.
9.3 9.3.
9.4 is not there. 9.
Every one of them is missing goals.
9.5 is there.
So 9.4, I'll put the goals right now so I don't forget. So the goal for desktop would be this.
Atas, can you please drop it inside the folder again, the Google Drive?
I'm putting it
So
here.
that
I will re-upload. I will re-upload the whatever.
All right.
So I will name it to goal desktop. That's the first one. Now for the mobile, don't worry, I will re-upload the folders. For the mobile, I'll screenshots.
So will they all be different codes, or will it just be one code that will do the same job of the desktop, or we have to send different codes?
Wait first, when you both wait first and watch those videos.
Asking creative, I mean, a constructive question.
Oh,
But
you
I-
watch
But-
videos first.
But you have no. I'm stressed. I realize that you are stressing me right now.
What is stress, Jide? Sorry, Jide. Okay, so those are the two goals for the mobile, for the desktop, and for the mobile. That's what you're going to achieve here. Once you watch this video, the first one on media query, you'll be able to achieve this, right? So two things on that one, 9.3 and 9.4 goes with media query. Now, the next one is Flexbox. So there's a video for Flexbox too. And this is video. This is the guy that taught me how to think in development. This guy, Net Ninja. But boy, this guy is good. Not that he's good, he's better than any other person in knowing what he does, but knowing how to teach. He knows how to teach very well, and he explains the best for me. So you will learn from these guys too. You can also follow him on YouTube. You can follow him on Twitter as well if you want to. He's a good guy. He's in the UK. So you can learn CSS grid. Sorry, what's the next one? The next one should be Flexbox, not grid. Sorry, we are not getting the grid yet. Flexbox. Flexbox, I'm taking you guys to free code camp. This is, if you go to any boot camp to learn how to code, this is what they will be referring you to most of the time, free code camp. Because everything you learn there is free and there's a lot of resources to learn from them. But this one is just one of their videos. You can learn Flexbox from this video because I've watched it before. Eh?
Is this on Smith guy waiting there for the guy?
Mimo, but this is the video for Flexbox. So if you watch this video, and I put the link here already, this is the link to that Flexbox video. After you watch this Flexbox, and you must have done most of the exercises in that video, before you jump to my exercise, I want you guys to go and play this game first. This game is going to help you to learn and understand Flexbox better. I'm bringing it to you. The link is there. I just want to show you what it looks like. This is the game. It's a Flexbox game. So you're going to be setting different things here and be seeing the reactions here. This was built by a very small boy, and it's useful to understand how Flex works if you have some time. Do this first. If you don't have enough time, you don't have to. You can take your time and do it later. What is important is watch this video. If you can, go through this game and then go to exercise 9.5 because that is on display Flex. So let's see what exercise 9.5 looks like. This is 9.5. We have a goal in here. This is what we want to achieve, okay? But there are other files I added here. Again, for somebody who has some time to spend or to spare, I just want you to study this code that I wrote here, see their behavior and their reaction. So how do you know this? If you preview the index.html, this is what it looks like right now, the exercise. And what I want to achieve is this. I want to put all of them as a single file after you, and you are not going to use display that we did before, inline or inline block. You are going to use flex to put them on a single row, okay? So this is what we're going to achieve. This is how it looks right now. Just arrange them on a single row using flex. And you can see some examples that I did in here if you just want to go through them and see. Like I said, learn how to read codes. If you don't understand anything here, preview it. And then you will see what that is doing. And then when you preview, you can go back to the code and see, okay, what did Latas do here? Then you can understand, okay? I know it's becoming much. Don't worry. These things will not really take your time. By the time you get into it, they are actually fast. You will be fast because they are simple. It's just because I'm taking time to explain them. And where is my... Then there are some Flexbox cheat codes for somebody who is interested to take this further if you have time. This is not compulsory, but I added it for you to learn more if you have some time. If you want to learn how to cheat the Flexbox, there are a lot of cheat tricks or tricks that you can use to understand this Flexbox very well. Those tricks are here in this link. Finally, on CSS Flexbox, there's a small project, very small projects to work on. You're not going to add too many code. Don't think because I'm calling them projects, they're going to be big or something. No, not really big. I already added all the code for you. You only need to add the style to achieve what we want to achieve. So 9.6 is Flexbox pricing table project. It's something that you guys will have seen a lot of time when you are trying to subscribe for something on the internet and they will show you price box, something like this. So on a large screen, this is what we want to see. We want to see those price boxes arranging themselves on a single row like that. The text and everything is already added for you. You only need to make them fit to different screen sizes because this is on the big size. On the small screen size, we want them to be vertical. So it's still the same thing. The difference in all I've been showing you since is that achieve this same thing using different methods. The first one is to use media query. Now we are trying to use Flexbox. And after this, we're going to use grid to still achieve the same thing. Then somebody will start asking, why do we now have different methods to achieve the same thing when I can use one? Well, there's a reason why. And that reason is coming in a video as well. You will watch it on the video. So this is the code for that. If I preview the code right now, you see how it looks. It looks like this, right? There's no that card background there. You just need to add that separate color and push them into where they need to be according to the screen size. So for big sizes, make it look like this. For small sizes, make it look like this. And this is what we have right now. Okay? So you already have most of the things for you. Just try to push them to where they belong according to the screen sizes. All right, guys. That is for Flexbox. Finally, is the grid. Just watch this video on grid. And that's my friend's video. Net Ninja, the best guy. When it comes to front-end development, this is the best for me. So watch this video on Flex Grid. I'm sure you're going to like his video. If you watch this video and go through his exercises, you can now work on 9.7, exercise 9.7 CSS Grid. That's the last exercise you're going to work on. I mean, display grid. That's the last exercise you're going to work on, which is here, 9.7 display grid. I know somebody is giving me Yimu like this. Yimu. I will not touch this thing. Please touch it too. I will flog people next class. So this is what you're going to achieve for this one. It's a chessboard. You're going to use grid to achieve this. I already added the code for you guys. This is the code. So there's a lot of div. You just need to use the knowledge of grid that you learned from that video to achieve this thing. Trust me, this is
the rate at which we are going. The rate at which we are going. We're about to build hair strands.
No.
You have jumped to chessboard now.
Yeah, so that's what I'm about to say.
Build a whole dog.
That's what I want to say. This chessboard looks complex, but Wallah is not complex. You're not going to write more than 10 codes to finish to do this. If you watch that video of grids, that's the reason why, one of the reasons why I want you guys to watch those videos, learn them on those videos. It will give you more explanation than what I can say in class. Those are professional developers and professional teachers. I am not a professional teacher. I'm just trying my best, but I know that you guys will learn a lot from that. I don't want us to spend the next week or no want to start. If I have to go through this in class, trust me, these things I want you guys to go through, it will take me another 4 classes. I don't have that 4 classes to spend on this because it's tail end of CSS, right? So this is the grid one, which you're going to do. This is the code already. If you view the code right now, you're not going to see anything because there's no color. You can see it's so blank. But once you start adding the color and the CSS code, everything will show up and you can get the grid. Trust me, if you watch that video on CSS grid, you will get this one hand straight away. That's the last exercise you're going to do. The last thing here is to play around on 9.8 that I did on grid sizing. Like I said, play around means study my code, play with it, test it out, see what is happening when you check it. Grid sizing. So there are a lot of things I put here. You can see auto size, just for you to go through and see when you're going through, preview them. When you preview, you will see, oh, this one, how did he achieve this? Then go here, change things around, change some of them. Look at the CSS code that I wrote. This one was done with grid. It will help you to understand what you've watched in that video better again. You may not actually need it because if you watch that guy's video, it will help you a lot. But just in case, who knows? Here, there is an exercise that you're doing. Sorry, that's not the last exercise. I'm sorry, I lied. But there's an exercise that you're supposed to do. Play around and work on the exercise in file 9.8. So when you play around here, you work on 9 points. It's supposed to be 9.9, not 9.8. 9.9. Let me give you 9.8. All right, grid placements. So this one has some code that you can play with. The first one is demo 1. If I preview this, you'll see the demo. You can check the code, how I achieved this. Like I said, these things are not going to take too many codes for you. Just simple codes. You just need to understand the concept. The second demo, if you preview that, you will see almost like the other one. If you preview the third one, and if you study these 3 demo, then you can help, or the 4 demo, you can help me to work on exercise 1, 2, and 3. They are simple. You just need to add 1 or 2 things there to achieve the goal. So for exercise 1, you are targeting goal 1. For exercise 2, you're targeting goal 2. For exercise 3, you're targeting goal 3. One thing I want you guys to do is this: engage me during the week when you're working on all of this. I know there's a lot of information here. If at some point you don't know what, you forgot what to do, or you don't know what to do with those things, reach out to me on Slack. I'll be available throughout the week to respond to your questions, and we can clear things out. Even if you are working and it becomes like you're not understanding something on my code or somewhere, reach out and I would help. That's the way I want us to learn this remaining part of CSS. And I would appreciate whoever would take the pain to go through this and achieve it before we move to building our capstone next class. And if you are able to do that, of course, that will be the end of CSS in this class, and there won't be any reason for us to start learning CSS again. Whatever new thing that comes in for CSS, we'll be learning it as we go in other stuff. So guys, any questions? Who hates me right now? Somebody is hating me right now. You guys hate me or you like me? Don't hate me now.
So, Atas,
yes.
Can we be uploading the project one after the other as we are doing it? It doesn't matter. Okay.
Yes, so as you're doing it, for the exercises, upload them on the class exercise, or on their site. Just upload them and I will see them.
It doesn't matter whether I do my 9.7 first.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And the chip for me, I go first do.
Just go through them. You don't have to do them in order. Just go through them. Any questions, guys?
How do we get the class exercise? The homework rather. home task.
Okay, so if you look at the folder you downloaded, you'll see this file, this PowerPoint or PDF files, both of them are there. They have this information, and because I already made some changes, I'm going to re-upload everything right now to have those changes in there. Okay, so I am going to save everything. So I'm going to save everything and re-upload for you guys. Make I mistakenly go upload the solution. Oh, mo shoot ara mi lẹ́sẹ̀ nìyẹn. Àwọn ọmọ ayé, ọmọ àgbè lódìndín ní.
Ó fi dùn ní, ó fi jẹ́ kó easy.
Àwọn ọmọ ayé. All right, let me look for my Google Drive. Where is Google Drive? It's here. So I'm going to remove the lesson 9 that I had there before and upload a new lesson 9 that has the changes. And you can download, guys. But I don't know if you have worked in your code before. Of course, I don't know how that works. You can download again and just extract those ones that has changes. Whichever way that is easy for you, do it. So I re-uploaded the file, the folder, lesson 9. And yeah, if everything works fine, that would be the end of CSS. And finally, I have this video I want to give you guys as a bonus. If at some point after watching the Flexbox and then you did the grid and you are confused, what determines which one I can use? Because they will look so close that you'll be confused. Like, how do I know when to use Flexbox or use grid? If that question comes to your mind at some point when you are watching, don't worry. Just help me to watch this video. It will help you. This guy explains the events that will happen that will make you decide what to use, whether Flexbox or grid. This video will be helpful. So, without missing
is that video part of the videos we're supposed to watch?
Can we have the link? Can we have the link to the video?
Is in learning resources. I just posted it in learning resources.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So if that question pop up at any point, that how do I even know which one to use, whether it's Flexbox or grid? Then watch that video. It will tell you, give you an idea of how to determine what to do, what to use, because they are very close. And guys, if all things being equal, ceteris paribus,
Yes, sir.
we would have come to the end of CSS and today's class. And I can give you some time back if you want it. You see, I didn't waste your time today. So that